Chapter 1: The Quiet Man. I am not the type of person who stands out. My neighbors in the Van Folk neighborhood know me as Nguyen Minh Khoi, 48, an IT engineer who lives alone in a 3-story, light gray house at the end of Hoa Sua Street. A middle-aged man with short hair streaked with gray at the temples, small eyes behind thin metal-rimmed glasses, and a lean but toned body thanks to regular morning swims. I speak softly, usually wear plain shirts and khaki pants, and rarely participate in neighborhood activities. The only thing that makes me stand out, perhaps, is my car collection. I own 7 cars, from the sleek black Mercedes S-Class that I drive every day, to the bright red Ferrari 488 GTB that I only take out on weekends, and the pure white Porsche Taycan of my choice for long trips. Then there's the Land Rover Defender for long drives into the mountains, the dark blue BMW 7 Series I inherited from my father, the silver Audi e-tron GT I bought last year, and finally the classic Ford Mustang I restored myself. I love my cars, but not because they make me stand out. On the contrary, I love the sense of ownership, control, and freedom they give me. Each car is a part of my personality, something that belongs to me completely. This, as I'm about to tell you, is important when you've spent more than half your life feeling like you're not in control of your own destiny. Van Phuoc Quarter is a gated, high-end residential area on the outskirts of Hanoi. With 212 villas designed in a modern European style, paved roads winding through manicured gardens, and a large artificial lake in the center, this is home to many successful families and individuals. But behind that luxurious and peaceful appearance is a different reality. All residents of Van Phuoc live under the strict management of the Van Phuoc Tin Twin Residents Association, abbreviated as VIET. And the head of VIET, Chairman Tran Bot Qua, is a figure that all residents know well and many hate bitterly. Chapter 2: VIET's Iron Fist. Tran Bot Qua, 62, is a large man with a square face, small, sharp eyes that are always observing everything, and perfectly trimmed silver hair. He always wears tailored suits in gray or dark blue, a silk tie, and a Patek Philippe watch worth hundreds of millions of dong. Qua is a former CEO of a large real estate corporation, now retired but still not giving up power. After moving to Van Phuoc, Qua quickly won the position of chairman of VIET through sophisticated political tactics, combining promises of a model neighborhood, lavish dinner parties held at private villas, and sometimes subtle but effective threats. Under his leadership, VIET became an entity with almost complete control over every aspect of life in the neighborhood. VIET imposes a series of detailed regulations. House paint colors must be within an approved palette, garden trees cannot exceed a certain height, curtains must be closed after 10 p.m., and even the type of vehicles that can be parked in front of the house. Violating these regulations will result in fines, and after repeated violations, residents can be forced to sell their homes and leave the neighborhood. But what most upsets residents is the monthly management fee that VIET collects. This fee has increased steadily each year, is unclear about its purpose, and is often accompanied by unexpected surcharges for improvement projects that residents rarely see concrete results from. In the 5 years I lived in Van Phuoc, I witnessed many families being forced to leave because they could not meet VIET's increasingly demanding requirements. The vacant houses were often later bought by Qua's allies or subsidiaries of the real estate group he once ran. I was not the only one who noticed this. Many people protested openly at the resident meetings. But Qua, with his autocratic and cunning nature, always tried to paralyze the dissenting voices. He used the tactic of divide and rule, creating conflicts between groups of residents, and even hired people to monitor those he considered troublemakers. One of the victims of this tactic was Thi Minh Nguyet, a 55-year-old university professor who lived alone in a villa across from mine. Ms. Nguyet publicly criticized VIET's unreasonable fee increase at a meeting 2 years ago. A week later, she received a series of complaints from VIET about excessive noise from her house, a completely fabricated story because Ms. Nguyet lives an extremely quiet life. The complaints and warnings continued to arrive every week, until Ms. Nguyet, tired of the harassment, decided to sell her house and move out. Her villa was later bought by a close friend of Qua's at a price much lower than the market price. I watched all this in silence. Not because I was afraid, but because I had my own long-term plan. Chapter 3, The Fire That Broke Out. That fateful morning started like any other. I woke up at 5 a.m., swam 50 laps in my private pool, then enjoyed a cup of strong black coffee on the balcony overlooking my small garden. It was a late April day, the air fresh after a night of rain. While I was checking my email, the doorbell rang. Outside was Dang T Hong, VIET secretary, a middle-aged woman who always wore black business suits, with a cold face that rarely showed emotion. "Good morning, Mr. Koi," she said, her voice even. "I have a notice from the VIET management board." She handed me a thick envelope. I opened it and saw a 2-page letter, signed by Tran Bok Kwa at the bottom. The letter announced that the VIET Council had conducted an assessment of property for residents and decided to impose a new surcharge called the Extended Community Space Use Fee. Residents with multiple private vehicles would be charged an additional fee for impact on shared space and neighborhood infrastructure. And I, with 7 cars, was charged the highest fee, VND 35 million per month, on top of the usual VND 15 million management fee I already paid. "What is this?" I asked, trying to contain my anger. "I park on my own land, in my garage and yard. I do not use any public space. The fee is based on the number of vehicles, not the parking space," Hone replied coolly. As the letter explains, each additional vehicle increases traffic and impacts the shared infrastructure. Your cars frequently enter and exit the neighborhood, using the shared road. But those roads, I paid for their construction and maintenance. I protested. "The normal management fee is only charged for one standard vehicle per household," Hone said, unwavering. "Owning multiple vehicles is a luxury that has a greater impact on the community." I looked down at the bottom of the letter, where it stated, "Please pay the surcharge within 7 days of receiving the notice. Failure to comply will result in VIET's disciplinary action, including fines, restrictions on public facilities, and possible requests for property transfer." My blood boiled. This was more than an unreasonable fee increase, it was a blatant violation of my personal freedom and property rights. "I will not pay this fee," I said firmly. Hone raised her eyebrows. "Then I will report this to Mr. Kwa. You should consider this decision carefully, Mr. Koi." As Hone left, I leaned against the door, still clutching the crumpled letter. For the past 5 years, I had silently observed and endured VIET's arbitrary actions. But today, they had crossed the line. It was time to activate the plan I had been preparing for all these years. Chapter 4, The Secret Behind the Mast. To understand my plan, we need to go back 20 years. I was born into a poor family in a small village in northern Vietnam. My parents were simple farmers, working hard from morning to night on small fields to support the family. However, they always prioritized the education of me, their only son, the hope of changing their lives. With constant efforts, I won a scholarship to study abroad in the US, earned a degree in information technology engineering, and then worked for a large technology company in Silicon Valley. During my 15 years in the US, I not only accumulated experience and knowledge, but also built a significant fortune through wise investments in technology stocks and startups. But then my parents passed away, leaving me with an unfillable void. That was when I decided to return to Vietnam, find my roots and continue my career as an independent technology investor and consultant. Back home, I chose to live in Van Phuc area because of its peace and privacy. I bought a villa at the end of Hoa Sua Street, where I could enjoy the quiet and private space. However, after only a few months, I realized that the peace was just a facade, and VIET was the real force ruling the neighborhood. I still clearly remember the first time I met Tran Bok Kwa, at a party welcoming new residents. He approached, raised his glass of champagne, and smiled the smile that never reached his cold eyes. "Mr. Koi, welcome to the Van Phuc family. I've heard about you, the engineer who returned from the US. Very impressive. But remember, in Van Phuc, we have our own rules. Follow those rules, and you will have a great life. Otherwise, things can become unnecessarily difficult." Behind the warm greeting was a clear threat. And over the following months, I witnessed how Qua and VIET imposed their power on each resident. I saw protesting residents being treated badly, families being forced to leave, and how VIET gradually took control of every aspect of the neighborhood. But instead of protesting openly like others, I chose a different approach. With a background in finance and investment, I began to study the ownership structure of the Van Folk area. And what I discovered revealed a bold plan. Van Folk is not owned outright by the residents. Like many high-end residential areas, much of the infrastructure, the streets, parks, lakes, and public amenities, is owned by a property management company, whose majority stake is held by the original developer. Residents own only their villas and plots of land, and pay a monthly fee to the management company to maintain the common amenities. This management company, Van Folk Real Estate Management Company Limited, VPRE, is now a subsidiary of the conglomerate Qua once ran. And although he has since retired, Qua still holds a significant stake and has a great deal of influence over its operations. This is the key to my plan. Over the past 5 years, through a network of shell companies and private equity funds, I have been quietly acquiring VPRE shares. At first, it was just small stakes from uninterested investors, then larger stakes from financially troubled business partners. I also bought many villas in the neighborhood through shell companies, rented them out at reasonable prices, and built a network of underground alliances among the residents. By now, I held 67% of VPRE shares and owned, through shell companies, 38 villas in the neighborhood, nearly a fifth of the total number of houses. I had real control over the Van Folk area, but no one knew about it, not even Qua. This secret was my last card, and now, with this latest unreasonable fee, it was time for me to use it. Chapter 5, The Confrontation. The next day, I called the VIET office and requested an urgent meeting with the dean of the faculty about the new fees. Hong initially declined, saying that Mr. Qua had a busy schedule, but when I mentioned that the matter involved VPRE and upcoming changes in the management structure, she arranged the meeting for 3 p.m. that afternoon. I could imagine Hong rushing to report my call to Qua, and Qua, curious by nature and concerned about any threat to his authority, quickly made time for the meeting. The VIET office was located in a small 2-story building next to the main entrance to the neighborhood. The first floor was occupied by administrative staff and security, while the second floor was reserved for the management board, with Qua's own office at the end of the hallway. When I entered Qua's office at exactly 3 p.m., he was sitting behind a large mahogany desk, looking authoritative in a dark blue suit. Also in the room were Hong and another man I recognized as No Din Fong, vice president of VIET and Qua's personal lawyer. Mr. Koi, hello, Qua said, without standing up. I heard you have a problem with the new fee. That's right, I replied, sitting down in the chair opposite without waiting to be invited. I think this fee is not only unreasonable but also violates the right to own private property. Qua smirked. All fees are in accordance with VIET's regulations that you agreed to when you bought your house here. We have the right to assess and adjust fees to ensure the quality of life of the community. But fining someone for owning multiple cars, while those cars are parked on their private land, is not ensuring the quality of life, I emphasized. It is exploitation and abuse of power. Fong interjected, VIET's regulations are very clear on this. Article 17.3 of the Internal Regulation stipulates that the Management Board has the right to take necessary measures to maintain the general order and aesthetics of the neighborhood. Owning too many vehicles is considered a factor affecting the general order. Aesthetics? Order? I sneered. So why are these strict regulations only apply to people who are not on Mr. Qua's side? Mr. Lai in Villa number 86 has 5 cars, but I don't see him receiving any notice of a fee increase. Qua's face showed a hint of annoyance. Each case is evaluated individually based on many factors. And I don't think you are qualified to discuss how we operate VIET. About that, I said, pulling a thick file from my briefcase. I think we need to clarify the actual authority of each person here. I opened the file, took out a stack of legal papers, and placed them on the table. This is proof of my ownership of 67% of the shares of Van Folk Real Estate Management Company Limited, the company that owns and manages the entire infrastructure of this neighborhood. Kwa and Fong were both surprised, quickly taking the documents and examining them. Hon stood behind them, her eyes wide with surprise. This can't be true, Kwa muttered, flipping through the pages. VPRE belongs to Nam Phuom Holdings. Nam Phuom Holdings has been selling its shares gradually over the past 3 years due to financial difficulties, I explained. And I, through my companies, have bought back the majority of those shares. I took out another document. This is a list of 38 villas in this neighborhood that I own through my subsidiaries. In other words, I'm not just a resident, I'm the owner of this neighborhood.